Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I will be your host. And our guest today is Scott Singer. And Scott has a company called Cyber9. So, welcome, Scott. And why don't you take a minute to tell us a little bit about you and your company and what makes you different than everybody else out there in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are a lot of companies and that are helping support businesses with cybersecurity, and we are another one of those companies. But what makes us unique? Well, we are approaching the DoD market here, and I come at it from a long history working in the DoD in the Navy, so 30 years in the Navy. And then on the flip side, I come at it from many years working in the private sector. So I worked for Medtronic for a long time, medical device, and then I worked for a DoD contractor. And that's really where I learned a lot about NIST SP 800 171 and the subject of what we're talking about these days with CMMC. So what makes us unique? Well, we approach working with our clients from the business perspective. Okay, what are the business owners' pain points? Okay, and normally what he's getting is he's getting a letter from one of the primes, the Northrops, the Lockheed Martins, ATKs, and he's getting a letter that says, do you comply with these cybersecurity requirements? And lots of other ones too, but there's a whole section on cybersecurity. And we come at it from that perspective. We are trying to get to more yeses in those check boxes that he's filling out for the prime. So that's the first point. The side effect to that is that we then try and make sure that we help them with business continuity and other things because we're providing solutions to help them be more secure, reduce the chance of ransomware and things like that. So that's one piece, what makes us a little different. The other thing is having been working as a manufacturer for the DoD supply chain, that brings a perspective that I think is unique because we know what ERP systems are, we know what travelers are, we know what the manufacturing floor does, we know what a CNC machine does and how it makes parts, we know what CMMs do, and if you don't know the acronyms, well, that's part of the special sauce we bring to the table, right? So, because we understand those things and we understand how those things come into scope and when they don't come into scope for these assessments. The last thing that we do is we have a pretty good background with export control. And a lot of these things overlap, whether it's the ITAR regulations or the export administration regulations, they overlap with some of the physical security requirements and the digital requirements within CMMC 2.0 and NIST SP 800 171. So we take a holistic approach, and then we help these businesses embed it into their existing quality systems, whether they're AS 9100, ISO 1345, ISO 9001. We don't want to create separate policies, processes, procedures. We want to embed it in their current processes so that it becomes something that they're already used to working with.
Well, that's very, very important. And that's a huge thing, talking to the business owners from the business perspective, because I find I talk to a lot of MSPs out there and they are very technical people. And sometimes they just focus too much on the technical language and the business owner doesn't even understand what they're talking about. So when you have the experience of the business, right? That's huge. You can talk to them that way. You have the experience of being in manufacturing, which that's another really important thing because there's a lot of MSPs that don't understand how manufacturing works. And manufacturers want to talk to somebody that understands their business specifically. So you got a lot of good stuff to bring to the table. So what size organization or what is your target client look like?
So we focus on small to medium-sized businesses. So for us, that's basically 500 employees or less. We have gotten into some larger engagements, but our sweet spot is in that space because we're not trying to compete with some of the larger consulting firms. We're trying to fill a niche that is underserved and is really the backbone of the whole defense industrial base is these small manufacturers that are making lots of these parts. And so it's our mission. It really is a mission to try and protect the defense industrial base and kind of manage that market.
And it's amazing how many small businesses that there really are, exactly what you're talking about, because a lot of people just think about just all the big primes, but that's why it's so important that we make sure that CMMC is not overwhelming and that these small organizations can achieve CMMC.
Right.
So yeah, that's good that you're focusing on the smaller ones. Well, is there anything else you want to throw out there about your company? Oh, wait, we got to talk about the name. Where did the name come from?
Sure. Yeah, so Cyber Nines people, what do you mean by nines, right? Well, it spun off of a company that called Five Nines, and they were a hosting environment data center. And you think about Five Nines as 5 nines uptime, right? That's basically less than 6 minutes downtime per year. So kind of think about it as our goal is to keep these businesses running, okay? Hence Cyber Nines.
Okay, now we all know. Inquiring minds now know where the name came from. So thank you for giving us that. Okay, so we have another exciting topic we're going to talk about today and maybe the legitimacy of it. So we're going to talk about SPRS scores. So the first thing, just briefly for people out there that might not know, that maybe should know, what exactly is a SPRS score?
Sure. Well, first, SPRS stands for Supplier Performance Risk System. And it's been around for quite a while, and I had been using it in my last company before it was ever used to post NIST scores, okay? So the primes use it to basically report on how they're doing against their awards, their contracts. They also post information in there about their small business compliance programs, how much money they're spending in these different small businesses, right? And minority businesses, women-owned businesses, service disabled veteran-owned small businesses like mine. So anyway, that's what it was used for. Well, they expanded the use to include now the posting of these scores for the whole defense industrial base supply chain, not just the primes, but all these subcontractors are also posting the score in the SPRS. So that's what it is. The score. What is the score? The score goes from minus 203 to positive 110, and it's just one of the weirdest kind of scoring models I've seen. But after I've been using it for a while, it sort of makes sense to me now. But trying to explain it to that small business owner when we walk in and tell them what their score is, they look at me like going, "What? What is this thing?" And what happens is you think, okay, a perfect score is 110, right? Well, there's 110 controls in NIST, right? So you'd think 1 point per control. Well, no. Some of them are 5 points, some are 3 points, some are 1 point, some are kind of hybrids where you can get 3 or 5 depending on what you're doing, and you subtract it if you're not doing it. Excuse me. So let's say you're not doing multi-factor authentication, okay? Well, then you subtract 5 points. Oh, but wait, you're doing it for administrative accounts when you're logging in remotely. Oh, well, you get 3 points for that. So anyway, you subtract the points as you go. Hence, that's how you get down to minus 203. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, here is going to be one of the questions that is going to be popping up now, because a lot of these people have been submitting these scores on their own. And, should it be accurate? Does it have to be accurate? What's the big deal with how accurate it really is?
Yeah, and so it's interesting because so far, from what I can tell, the scores aren't really being used too much by the buyers in the DoD. The only people that can see the score are yourself, the OSC, the company, or DIBCAC, or the DoD. So those are the only people that can see the score. Now, there's a lot of primes that are asking for the score, okay? And, I kind of recommend you don't email it in plain text out to the supplier. Maybe tell them over the phone if they really want to hear it. I try and tell people not to share it because it gives people kind of a sense of where you're at from a security perspective, right? But anyways, why should you care about? Because over time, they are going to start using that score to help assess risk in the supply chain. And it could have an impact on awards and which primes get an award based on how secure their supply chain is. And they might, this is me speculating now. This is not in the fact range, but they could start to take all these scores of all the subcontractors and use it as some way to gauge whether I'm going to pick this prime or that prime for the award. There is some guidance like that. If you go out to the acquisition websites from the DoD, you'll see some kind of references to things like that, but there's nothing in law that says you have to do one way or the other. So we tell our clients once a quarter, go in, make some improvements, close out some of those controls and NIST and improve your score, and then go in and post a new score. So if you're showing a quarterly improvement or semi-annually improvement, then it shows you have an active program that you're making progress.
KTL is a Microsoft Gold partner and a CMMC registered provider organization. Their professional team members represent a variety of backgrounds and industries that will map out and guide you on your road to CMMC compliance. The process starts with a dedicated team of CMMC registered practitioners who understand your specific requirements and are here to help every step of the way. KTL Solutions, delivering tailored solutions so you get the most out of your technology. Visit them today at ktlsolutions.com.
Okay, so then this is just the opposite. So what about oopsie, went in there and was clueless, didn't know what I was doing, and gave myself too high of a score. So how does it look then if you are realistic and go back in there and put a real score or an accurate score?
Believe it or not, this has happened on every situation where we've come in and helped act as a third party and do a basic assessment for a manufacturer. Every time we've come in, our score has been lower than what they self-attested to themselves. If they had gone and posted a score already, then our recommendation is what they should do is normally a manufacturer is going to have a quality process around non-conformance or corrective action. Use that process. Okay, open a non-conformance, an NCR, or open a corrective action, excuse me, and explain what happened. And then explain what you're doing to close it. Okay, well, we hired Fiber9s, we hired some other company to do the assessment. This is what they found. And that we're now working to manage our POAM and close the gap, okay? And that's going to help you in case you ever do get that audit assessment from DIBCAT to come in and they do that medium or high-level assessment. You can go back into your system and you can see that you figured out that you had posted a score too high and you corrected it. Now, where you can get in trouble here is through False Claims Act. So if you willingly post a score that's too high, then you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So obviously don't do that. Mm-hmm. The other side where you can kind of get yourself in a little bit of hot water, even if you do think you have a high score and you post it, what can happen there is all of a sudden you could be a target for an audit assessment from DOD or DIBCAC, and all of a sudden they come in and say, well, why do you have such a high score? And then they're going to come in and probably find the same thing that we did, and your score is probably a lot lower.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's good. So you just gave people a solution, because I think there are quite a few people that are going to be in this situation. So now they know if they did this, and legitimately, they really thought they were giving themselves the proper score, but then somebody who really is more familiar with it goes in there, like yourself, and says, then they have a way out of the mess. So.
And Dane, I would add one other thing to go above and beyond is that I would also recommend that you voluntarily disclose to DOD, write them a letter and say, this is what happened, this is what we did to correct it. Mm-hmm. That you're not going to get in trouble for doing that. They like to see letters like that, especially if you go into the other side of the house, which is the export control world. Department of State and Department of Commerce are used to those kind of letters all the time. And when you send in a letter like that, it shows that you're paying attention and you're taking it seriously and you're fixing it. Mm-hmm. And now you don't have to look in the rearview mirror and worry about, hey, did I do something wrong? I mean, no, you disclosed it. Yeah, we had a problem. We went and fixed it.
Perfect. That's excellent, excellent advice. Okay, so our next question. So Cyber9s helps small manufacturers get compliant with DoD cybersecurity requirements. And now that CMMC 2.0 is here, what are some of your concerns?
Yeah. So first of all, excuse me, I'm really am supportive of CMMC 2.0. I think getting back to the the groundwork of NIST SP 800 171 being an independent framework that all of the government can buy into for cybersecurity is really important. Sometimes the enemy, of good is perfect, and throwing in all these extra, processes 996, 997, 998, all those different, CMMC practices that they had put in, the extra 20 delta that they had added. While I believe that they're good, and a lot of those should be in place already anyways, it created confusion and complexity, and it put the DoD out on an island by itself, which I don't think was a good thing. So pulling that back in is a good thing. Where I run into some frustration with it is that they came out with the level 2, which is the old level 3, and they didn't give good solid guidance. They call it bifurcation now. They didn't give good solid guidance on who needs to be able to self-attest and who has to get a third-party assessment. So that's created some confusion. And in fact, with some of our clients, they're taking a wait and see attitude. They just are saying, it's back into rulemaking. It's 9 months to 2 years before this is going to be new DFARs are going to come out for this. I'm going to wait because I don't know what's going to happen. And that is probably an unintended consequence of not being very clear here. That is kind of disappointing to me. So as part of this, I'm a member of this stakeholder, C3PO stakeholder forum. We're coming out with some guidance, actually not guidance, a policy recommendation on what we should do here. And hopefully the DoD will, take that from kind of the stakeholder forum and take it to heart and look at it, because I hate to see all these businesses putting the brakes on cybersecurity right now.
And a lot of them are doing that. And I think that they should at least look at it as, okay, let's say we have to do a self-attestation, then just prepare for that. And then if you are required to have a third party come in, you're already most of the way there. So as opposed to just saying, well, we're not going to do anything. I mean, I have heard that many times. And
and Dana, this has been in place since 2015. Right? I mean, people have been supposed to have been making progress since then. And so, and that's part of the DoD's frustration also, is their expectation that people should be further along, but the reality just isn't there.
Yep. If you don't have somebody coming in and checking, that's third party.
Right.
We're going to tell you that we're doing it, kind of thing. So yes, a lot of frustration on lots of little levels there. All right. So our new thing, the new scoping guidance has come out. It has been released. And how will it impact managed service providers that support the small manufacturers?
Yeah. So the scoping guidance was long awaited, and it's good. I mean, it's a good thing that, it came out. Part of the concern I have a little bit with the scoping guidance is that one of the areas they talk about are special assets like CNC machines, a CNC machine, a computer numerical control. I think I got that right. It's like one of those things where you just use acronyms all the time. You never know.
I hear them.
Right? So these machines are out on the shop floor and they make parts, okay? And they can make ITAR parts. You put the ITAR program into the machine and it makes the part, okay? Well, ITAR regulations do cover part of protecting that machine, but CMMC NIST is supposed to also be covering parts of that too. And they've decided in the scoping guidance to push that out of the realm of having to meet all these controls. I think that's an issue from the perspective of just keeping these devices secure, but it's also not inherently clear that it is out of scope. I mean, because one section will talk about the fact that, if it processes, stores, CUI, it's in scope. Okay. And then the next section, they specifically mention machines like CNC machines being out of scope. But the lines blur, right? Because these machines now are on the network. Okay. And the programs are flowing from servers or PCs over the network into the machine, and they're constantly connected. So how do they not become part of the scope of the network, because they are a device on the network? So all I'm saying is it's the first release of the guidance that's come out. It's good that it's come out, but I think there's going to need to be some more work on it over time here.
Is the thought process behind that because, for example, let's say you have an XP machine that is one that can is the only one that can either utilize some kind of software or something related to making some of these parts, and because that's no longer supported, or because some software is on a website that Internet Explorer is the only one? Is that why they had to do those things?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm guessing, because I've heard, well, some people say, well, what are we going to do? This thing only runs on XP, and just because it's not, supported anymore. So
yeah, I mean, well, we are, as a business, as a consulting firm, regardless of what CMMC says or doesn't say, we're coming at it from trying to protect those, machines, and using different layers of VLANs and segregation to try and, or even air gapping in some situations, because it still works to take a USB drive, right? When it's got CUI on it, it's locked in a drawer. But when you need to program it, you program the drive, and then you take it over to the machine, put it in the machine, program it, and then take it back. I mean, so there's different ways to kind of manage the whole process. And, but we still think it's very important, regardless of what the standard says, to protect that data.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that, some people were upset with CMMC 2.0 because it took away a lot of stuff. Maybe that's where we will wind up. But to be realistic about implementing it, I think the 2.0 is a very good way to go about it. And I think that it's a good where we should be anyway, like you said, and then moving forward over the next 5-10 years. I think if we fast forwarded 10 years, when we look back at how we were handling cybersecurity in 2021, 22, I think we'll be, gasping. But
yeah. And again, it's like, we've got to get better, right? And so even doing some things like this, well, I think back to my comment that we've all heard the statement, right? The enemy of good is perfect, right? That's here too. Let's do things. Let's do some things good now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this was really, really good and very, very helpful. So thank you for all of your time and expertise with this, Scott.
Thank you, Dana.
And everybody, thank you very much for watching. And we hope to see you on the next episode of 123 CMMC. Bye till then.
See ya.